A couple of things I would say is I think traditionally we often promote people to their level of incompetence. And I think as a basic in many businesses, especially in that small to mid space, we don't actually teach managers the basics. I often say to my client, if your managers could just do 3 things better: hire better, manage better, exit better, your productivity will increase, your profitability will increase. And I think it's a bit unfair on those managers and supervisors too, because they've often not been trained how to do it. They're not taught how to have those difficult conversations.
Welcome to Season 4 of the Manage Self, Lead Others podcast with Nina Sunday, CSP, for experienced and aspiring people managers. This show helps you explore ways to become a more intentional leader. Each episode, host Nina Sunday speaks with some of the brightest business minds on the planet who share a passion to elevate and transform team culture. Workplace culture hides in plain sight. Is yours flourishing? Join the movement to make your workplace a better place to work. Are you ready? Because it's time to manage self, lead others.
Natasha Hawker is co-founder of Employee Matters, your in-house HR and recruitment experts coming in and out of your business as and when you need them. A finalist in the 2023 Telstra Best of Business Awards, Natasha Hawker is author of From Fire to Hire, Managing the Employee Life Cycle, Hire, Manage, Wellbeing and Exit. A former international HR manager with a Fortune 500 company, Accenture, who worked in Australia, London and India. Welcome, Natasha Hawker.
Thank you for having me, Nina. It's a pleasure to be here.
And I recommend From Hire to Fire by Natasha Hawker that it be on every manager's shelf, because it's like HR in a box, really.
It is. And that's how I designed the book, to be written or read as a reference or end to end.
That's right. And of course, any Australian manager, you'll also see lots of references to Australian law, but it's full of all universal principles if you're somewhere else in the world. And you don't really come across these sort of books very often. So
No.
It's a beautiful, beautiful piece of work. Well done.
The feedback I usually get is, it sounds like you're sitting there talking to me, Natasha, and it's so practical. So that's exactly what I had in my vision when I was writing it. I wanted it to become sort of a dog-eared companion for managers, because they find this stuff hard. And you're absolutely right, Nina. 60% of it is global principles, and useful no matter what country you're residing in.
So my eyes landed on the chapter with the bit in it, having the difficult conversation. And it's almost universal now. You know, do you have difficult conversations? Do you avoid them? And I think those are the 3 questions you ask managers, don't you? Tell us about that.
Yes, I think far too often, Nina, we end up in difficult conversations because we don't normalise feedback as part of everyday business. And I think often where managers go wrong is they don't set it up for success at the beginning, along the lines of, look, we're all about continuous improvement here. I want to be giving you feedback on a regular basis, what's working well, what's not working well, why we're doing this, what's the outcome I'm expecting. And I would love to see businesses do more of that.
And I love hearing you say we need to normalise these conversations, because if you can have regular one-on-ones even more often than every month, what's the frequency that you recommend?
We do huddles, which are 15 minutes a day. So I catch up with my 3 team members that are direct reports into me. Actually 4. Daily huddles with 3 of them, and a weekly with my GM, because he doesn't need it as much. But I think huddles are key. You know, what are you working on today? It keeps people accountable. What are you working on today? What did you achieve yesterday? And what are you doing tomorrow? And that just keeps things flowing, especially because, in all transparency, I run a remote team. I have done since back in 2011 when I started this business. Nina, I like to say I was ahead of the curve. So it's absolutely critical that we communicate on a regular basis and everyone's very clear about what they need to be focused on and get that stuff done. And I think the other gap for me, and it sounds so simple, but it's generally not done well, is listening skills. In terms of that de-escalation when it's not going so well, I think listening skills are key. You know, it's really important that people have their chance to say what they're feeling, especially if you've given them some feedback, but also play back to them what I heard. I think people sometimes feel that they're repeating it, but you never underestimate what people feel when they go, so can I just play back to you what I heard, and let them correct you, because that gives you more information. And I think use deference and, would it be a problem for me to share what I'm thinking? I read a fabulous book called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. Are you familiar with that one,
I've
Nina?
heard of that.
Oh, it's excellent. And I use that framework for negotiation, and I use it when I've got the very, very rare client complaint as a framework for managing that. And I find that from a de-escalation viewpoint, that technique is brilliant. And I think it's really, really important. So they're my key tips there, I think.
Very good tips. One of the reasons people or managers tend to avoid these difficult conversations, we're talking really one-on-one now, aren't we, rather than huddles. One of the things you say is they're not taught how to do it.
And I think as a basic in many businesses, especially in that small to mid space, we don't actually teach managers the basics. I often say to my client, if your managers could just do 3 things better: hire better, manage better, exit better, your productivity will increase, your profitability will increase. And I think it's a bit unfair on those managers and supervisors too, because they've often not been trained how to do it. They're not taught how to have those difficult conversations. In Australia, we use performance improvement plans. They're used in the UK, and I think they're used in the US as well, around if somebody's not performing, how do we turn that performance around? Because it's definitely much cheaper to correct somebody who's not performing than to exit and start again. But again, I would argue, Nina, if we were having those those regular feedback conversations at the beginning, then we wouldn't end up in PIP scenarios so frequently as we do. Or we don't end up in a PIP scenario and then we go to that exit, an expensive exit under a code of silence, and pay them go away money, which is universal as well.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Look, there have been times when I didn't actually pull up somebody for a consistent behaviour that I thought was negative and impacting other people, because I was afraid that it was too petty. It was just a little thing.
And it's often, like, having done so many of these performance management discussions over the years, I have to say now my team do them and they're infinitely better than me. But often the individual was like, if somebody had just told me, I didn't realize, I would have changed that months, years ago. But to your point around not having that conversation because it feels petty or too small, often snowballs over time. And, if it's annoying to you now, it's going to be even more annoying to you in 3, 4, 5, 6 months.
Oh, yes. But here's the thing. I never really set it up to have regular one-on-ones that were private, that were in a location where we couldn't be overheard, where I could just have, it's just an opportunity to have a share. And it may not always be a negative thing, but the point is when the negative thing happens, you've set up that framework to be able to talk about it. And so these one-on-ones really are the biggest shift that I started doing in my business finally.
I think the other thing I would share is it's really important to be vulnerable as well. So do you have any feedback you would like to give me? Is there another way that I could be managing you to get the most out of you? And you need to develop trust for them to be able to be brave enough to give you that feedback. But I think it's really important that we do ask for that feedback, because hey, there may be something that we're doing that's proving a blocker to them as well, which should be great if we got that out of the way. The other thing to remember too, Nina, is in my view, people don't leave companies, they leave leaders. True. So, if you want to reduce attrition, that's a great way to do it. And most people want to be developed. They want to grow and develop. And again, that comes back to that setup at the beginning. I want you to be better in 12 months' time than where you are now. Would it be a good idea, or would it not be a bad idea for me to share some feedback of what you're doing well so we can do more of that, and also where we can improve? And I'd like to get your perspective on me as well, if that makes sense and that's someone you value their feedback.
And I think that it's a healthy culture and a healthy team when the leader can say one-on-one, please give me your feedback. And I think that's a good sign. That's an excellent sign. So we get to the point where we're a manager, we share an observation about a habitual behavior, and people can either get upset, angry, they can have tears. How can you de-escalate that situation? Are there any tactics for that?
I think it's very important to acknowledge that. It seems like I've upset you. It seems like you're feeling angry. It looks to me like I've hurt your feelings. It seems like you're not listening to me or you disagree with me, and then pause. And this is the great techniques from Never Split the Difference, but then give them a question and say, do I have that right? And they might say, yes, I am upset. And then you can dig down on that and say, I understand that that can be hurtful. And this is where I would use myself as an instance. I'd say, you know what? I know that one of my challenges is I'm not great with criticism, even though I'm really pro self, development and advancing and so on. But I know sometimes criticism can sometimes hurt my feelings. So my response to that would probably be, look, I've just taken a little hit. I know this is my weak spot. I will get over it. And I've got some techniques to do that, or whatever the case may be. But acknowledging how they feel and trying to address that is so important.
When you say you as the leader don't take well to criticism, are you suggesting that they might need time out to actually process it, and you might adjourn the meeting?
Yes, either in that meeting. But I think one of the keys that I've learned is when you know how often I think as managers, and especially early in my career, you would have a feeling that someone wasn't happy, but we just skim over it.
Yes.
We've said what we need to say.
Afraid to ask in case you get the truth.
You're afraid to ask. But actually that truth, there's power in that truth by saying, it seems like I've upset you, or it seems like I've hurt your feelings. And then just be quiet and see what comes out. Because then if they give you that information, then you've got somewhere to go with that information. Right. And so that will de-escalate it.
Yes. What you're talking about now is what effective teams, a quality that effective teams have is social sensitivity, which is the ability to read the non-verbal body language or facial expression and be able to talk to that. Say, I notice a certain reaction. Can you, how are you feeling around this new information or whatever you think is triggering it?
And I think the other thing is to acknowledge, even at the beginning of the conversation, we're going to have a hard conversation. Not sneak up jump on them. It's going to say, I'm going to have to give you some information that you may not want to hear, but I'm doing this because I think we can grow, or you can grow as a result of that. Be honest about the fact that you're about to give them some information that may not be welcomed initially, or may not be something that they even realize.
Yes, because you do say in your book, in terms of the process, to share the facts. And in my head, I went, yes, but how? So being upfront and saying,
it's really important.
I don't, well, this is a good one. I don't know if, or I don't know how you will feel when I share this. I hope, and then maybe talk to the future. I hope that the goal of this is to have a very good working relationship, and I just want to bring up a couple of things that I've observed. Something like that?
You could do that. I don't know. The other thing you could be is a bit more blunt with it. If you think they are going to feel bad about it, say they're going to feel bad about it. There's no, if that's what you think, then put that out into the world, because guess what? They will correct you. And if they do correct you, that's going to give you more information in which to evolve this conversation.
That is great. I love it. I love it. Now, I loved the whole thing on exit interviews.
Exit interviews are incredibly powerful because they give you great intel for a couple of reasons. I think two things need to happen. One is it needs to be done with someone, probably not their boss, because as they're leaving, that might be the reason why they're leaving. So someone who's a bit more independent. The second thing is that, having that information is absolutely critical because, for example, you might see patterns developing. If everyone's leaving because of salary, then there's a salary issue. If everyone's leaving this department because Fred runs this department, maybe Fred's the issue. So I think exit interviews are absolutely key to give us data, and people are often more comfortable sharing what they think more honestly, especially if they've never been encouraged to give feedback when they're walking out the door. And then there are going to be
they've got nothing to lose.
They've got nothing to lose. So they can tend to be quite brutally honest. The other thing I would suggest that is even more valuable, and where we don't want to be losing our great employees, is to do stay interviews. And stay interviews are what would make you stay with me for another 2 years. Because if I can identify that they're a flight risk before they're a flight risk, and amend something, maybe give them some more training, maybe they want to be mentored by me, maybe they want to change departments, and you can do that and retain that employee versus losing them to the market, that's a good thing to do.
So a stay interview is not waiting until they've resigned. It's just really part of a one-on-one.
Yes.
So, and saying, we hope that you'll stay for another few years.
12 months.
What do you need? What do you need from us in order for you to feel comfortable to know you're going to stay?
And in some cases, Nina, what they want, you may not be able to deliver.
True.
And that's okay. At least you know that, and at least you're almost preparing for an exit then.
Now, you talk about the benefits of an alumni program, and I've never worked for an organisation that had one or even talked about having one. So is this a new trend or what's the story?
No, Nina, it's been around for years, but I have to say it's very much in the larger corporates. So an alumni program is trying to stay connected to all the people that have left your organisation. And it's most likely for people who've resigned or have been made redundant. Tends not to be those people who've been performance managed out of the organisation. No. But it's trying to stay connected because often those people end up your clients, or they end up referrers of work, or they can come back. So I do it very informally with my employees because a lot of my ex-employees have ended up as clients, but they always end up as referrers of business.
Let's go back now to the onboarding process, because I'm sure that the onboarding, there's certain things that you need to be mindful of when you're onboarding that will actually smooth things out for a good stay in the organisation. So what's your tips on onboarding?
So in my experience, I have to say that typically onboarding is done poorly or not at all. I think a lot of people hire and then pop them in a desk in front of a computer, be it at home or in an office, and they expect them to learn through osmosis. And we know, Nina, that employees are at their greatest risk of leaving you in the first 6 months, and it's often due to poor induction. So imagine you've got an employee who's a high performer in a previous organisation. They know everyone. They know how everything gets done around here. They're able to deliver at speed and at quality. And then they're thrown into a new environment. They don't know how the systems work. They don't know how things are done around here. They don't understand the culture. They don't have someone to ask the dumb questions. There's never a dumb question. So it's really important to get your employees up to speed as quickly as possible and to get your return on investment. We typically say it can take anywhere between 1 month and 6 months until they're fully operational in that role. So you want to try and expedite that. What tools and equipments do they need? How do they navigate in the organization and navigate their role? My dad told me this when I was 18, and I think it's one of the best pieces of advice I ever got. Always make it easy to promote you by teaching someone to do your job. So you build your replacement in there. So then when there's a promotion up, they're very happy to promote you because, hey, I've got this ready-made replacement ready, where I think often there's a tendency to hoard my skills. I'm protecting my role because no one should be able to do it as well as me. And I think that's dangerous. So I think the more we can do to lift them to that next learning curve and ask them, I think often as managers, and particularly as business owners, we underestimate the fact that people want to learn from us, and it may not just be their core skill. It may be like, how did you start a business? Or, how do you do marketing? That's not my vein, but I'd like to learn more about that. So I think it's really important that we find out what's going to keep them interested and suggest stuff if you don't.
You know what? I absolutely think you've nailed it right there, because I think the reason some managers aren't even thinking about the learning and development needs of their people is they're afraid they'll get so smart that they'll get rid of, well, somehow take over their job, but they're not thinking, well, I have to rise up within the organisation, so I'm building my replacement. It's really up to the leader to try and educate team members that always be thinking about how you can progress through the organisation. And the way to progress is to not make yourself indispensable. It's to make the people that are your direct reports indispensable. Well, it's wonderful hearing the wisdom that you're able to share. And we've sort of come to the end of our time, Natasha. It's been a wonderful exploration. Is there any closing comments or any trend that you want to highlight, or any gap that you see as a pattern that people are forgetting in the workforce?
I think I would come back to that management team. I think they're underutilized and therefore they're not getting their ROI. I think if we could train our managers up to maximize the productivity of their employees through hiring well, managing well, and exiting, and that exiting might be a promotion to another part of the business. It may not be an exit out the door. Or there are some people that may only have 2 years in your organization, but if it's 2 fabulous years and they go off to be a client, that's a great outcome too. So we've developed some training around how do we, that employee life cycle, how do we train managers to hire, manage, and exit better? And I think we do need to encourage investment in that space, because I don't think people train their managers to get their ROI from both their management team, but also the employees that sit under them.
Excellent. That's a really interesting gap that you've identified there. So that's a good one for anyone listening. Look, thank you so much. Tell us how people can find you, how they can use Employee Matters.
Yes, so easiest way to get us is employeematters.com.au. How they can use us, we do recruitment and HR to small to medium businesses. I believe HR isn't just your competitive, let me say that again. I believe exceptional HR doesn't just fix or even prevent your employee problems. Exceptional HR is your competitive edge for more profit, more growth, and the sustainability of your business. Businesses need to do people smarter. I think they waste a lot of ROI on not having the right people in the right jobs at the right time too.
Mm. Well, look, thank you for giving us your time today. I really appreciate it. And thank you very much, Natasha Hawker, with your book From Hire to Fire. I think people can run out now and buy that book. And also share this episode with your friends. So all the best, and thank you so much, Natasha.
Thanks, Nina. And remember, your employees really do matter.
Indeed. Okay. My episode this week was with guest Natasha Hawker, co-founder of Employee Matters, who does in-house HR recruitment for companies. They can come in and out of your business as and when you need them. My name is Nina Sunday, and if you find this valuable, share this episode with your friends. Just give them the link. It's either on YouTube, our Manage Self Lead Others podcast channel, or all the audio podcast apps.
Nina Sunday CSP is on a mission to help leaders transform culture. Nina Sunday travels from Brisbane, Australia to facilitate half-day or full-day workshops at your location anywhere across Australia. For a list of Nina's topics around leading people, productivity and communication, go to brainpowertraining.com.au/signature programs to request a tailored proposal. To book Nina Sunday CSP to speak at your conference in Australia, New Zealand, Asia or internationally, head to ninasunday.com for details.